it looks like Tommy Robinson is off to prison, and not before time, I would say. Might surprise some of you. You know how strong a stance I take on free speech and free expression. Not quite an absolutist, but, you know, harm is the level at which I finally would draw the line on speech. And Tommy and his supporters and his fellow grifters and fellow travellers and people who have been fooled by him often try to frame what he has done or what he is doing in terms of free speech, free expression, rights of the press, or whatever. He's not really a reporter, though he's kind of been hired as one by Rebel Media, I believe. But still, that's not it. That's not what's happened in this instance. I know some Americans find that hard to believe as well, because they have much less restriction when it comes to court proceedings than we do, except to the very high level. The right to free expression, the right to free speech, the right to report, the rights of the media and so on, yeah, all rights appear to at some point or in some way clash with each other. So another fundamental human right that we uphold in Western democracies is the right to a fair trial, right? And there is also a certain right to privacy. This has been coming up quite a lot in relation to social media companies and so on, with Zuckerberg and so on being summoned before Parliament to answer for the intrusions into privacy that they've done, and governments themselves coming under scrutiny for projects like Echelon and so on, and how that's intrusive into privacy. There's just today I saw a news article about leaked audio from Google Home Assistant. Right? It's privacy is a concern. Now, in Britain, we do have a certain amount of rights to free speech. It's just not enshrined in the same way as it is in American law, right? Our constitution it's a written but unwritten constitution. It's scattered throughout case law and parliamentary bills and so on. It's very confusing, and I think we should campaign for a proper Bill of Rights and a proper UK constitution, quite honestly, but that's by the by. But one of these competing rights is the right to a fair trial. So would the people allegedly involved in these rape gangs and paedophile gangs, would they get a fair trial if they were known? Are there risks associated with identifying the people involved? I would say yes. Yeah, a mere accusation of a crime so horrendous as this is very likely to lead people to seek extrajudicial justice, or revenge is a better way to put it. Vigilantism, you know, it's a real risk. Violence is a real risk. Violent protests are a real risk, especially if Tommy's involved, quite honestly. So from that you can see how, if the people are identified, if the area that they're from is identified, that's a problem, and it also might lead to identification of the victims. So you have to consider them as well. But the fair trial issue is a big one, and we take that super serial here in the UK. The fair trial trumps the right to free speech and free expression and so on here. And on reflection, over the past 24 to 48 hours, I think that's probably right. I think the right to be treated fairly, equitably and evenly by the legal system is really important. So I think it should have primacy over free speech. So I think there can be justifications for excluding the media from certain court cases, making certain details public, depending on the case, depending on the people involved, and so on. So that's right. The other side of this is privacy, and in this case we're talking about the privacy of the victims. And if you read the 2016 guidelines on media reporting on trials, the single no questions asked justification for excluding the media is if minors are involved. That might be reversed in some cases if it's in the public interest. I think that happened with the two lads that murdered the toddler. I think that was somewhat reported on because it was considered to be in the public interest and the information was already out there. But in this case, the victims, young girls who've been raped, groomed, abused, and so on, the reporting on the trial could expose their identities and place them under additional stress, wreck their privacy, and so on. That was a reason to restrict reporting on it. So Tommy blunders in, hurling accusations left and right, identifying suspects or people who are on trial who must be considered innocent until proven guilty in law and in logic, and risking, threatening, identifying by association or more directly some of the victims who were minors, right? And this in the background of already having been warned off plenty of times not to do this behavior, but he persisted. That's an issue as well. That's contempt of court. Two ways. Ignoring the order not to report on these things, and the reporting itself in the face of a ban. So yeah, he broke the law. He probably should face punishment, because a fair trial is a big deal. Now, why has Tommy's trials not been the same? Why hasn't he been treated necessarily fairly? Why hasn't the proceedings against him been particularly public? Well, Tommy supporters, I think that's primarily your fault. They're worried about violence, they're worried about protests, and so on, and that is another justification for why things might happen in private, or you might not necessarily be put forward to a jury trial. The other thing, I guess, in this case is that there's absolutely no question that he did what he's accused of. It's on video. So that's that. There doesn't appear to be any real injustice here. Is Tommy... Look, brief aside, right? A lot of the media, myself included, if I include myself in media, like to point out Tommy's real name is Stephen Yaxley-Lennon. He's trans class. We should respect that and not dead name him. Okay, it is kind of petty. I'm going to try to avoid doing it in future because it is petty and pointless. But there you go. So Tommy is going to prison. Is he at risk in prison? Possibly. They do have a duty of care to him. Is he going to end up next to a lot of Muslims? Probably. Prisons are prime recruiting grounds for most religions, Islam in particular, and because immigrant populations tend to be poorer, there tends to be more crime in immigrant communities, which means more immigrants end up in the prison system. And I'm really struggling hard not to make a prison rape joke here because it's not funny. Anyway, yeah, the right to a fair trial and the right of privacy of the victims and of the people who must be presumed innocent. Remember, that trumps free expression rights in this instance, and I think that goes to harm, which is the only justification that I believe that there is for constricting free speech. He threatened to cause harm both to the accused, who must be considered innocent, and the victims. And so he should face justice for that. I don't think he's going to end up dying in prison. That would be very bad publicity and reflect very badly on the judicial system here. Now, just to head off to the haters at the end, yeah, I'm a scruffy, ratty-looking motherfucker, a scum rocker, whatever you want to call it. My appearance has nothing to do with the arguments here, so save yourself. All right. To the best of my knowledge, I am not mixed race, nor Jewish. So criticizing me on that basis, I would advise you to think how that looks, right? If you're going to claim that you're not racists, that Tommy followers aren't racist, that Tommy isn't a racist, but then your go-to argument always seems to be that I'm some sort of mudblood. Just think about how that looks. Consider public relations for once. And if you want Tommy to get treated fairly and openly by the judicial system, stop kicking off. Zang.
The police bring in reinforcements.
There was justice there, no poverty and no violent crime.